Good morning and welcome to the Harvard House Money Morsel, where we use the power of social media and video to keep you up to date with what's moving the markets and your money. Welcome, viewers. I'm sitting again with Michael Porter, Chief Investment Officer at Harvard House. Good morning, Michael.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us. Michael, we've seen with the Ukraine invasion of Russia that the oil prices obviously spiked. We talked some time ago together in one of our previous morsels about inflation, whether it was transitory or whether it was going to stick around for a while. What's quite clear is that inflation is going to be with us a little bit longer than we thought. Can you please just give us what you're seeing, how you're reading the whole inflation story and what's happening from there?
Morning, Robin. Morning, everybody. It's a really interesting situation. Last week, it's actually crazy to think that we're only 2 weeks into this invasion and how much has changed in that short space of time. But last week saw the biggest commodity price shock in history, going back 70 years, in terms of a basket of commodity prices rising by sort of 15% essentially. But yes, there's definitely concerns about inflation. Inflation was a concern before this. It's certainly a concern now, and there's obviously mainly in energy prices, fuel, gas and oil, but also in agricultural commodities because Russia and Ukraine are quite big exporters of wheat, soya, and some of the ingredients to make fertilizers. So there's also a concern about agricultural inflation. I think, Robin, though, you have to just put it in context, and markets are hugely reactionary and they get pushed around. I mean, oil prices touched $140 a barrel on Monday or on Sunday night when the US announced essentially an embargo on Russian oil. This morning they're at $109 a barrel. So yes, there is markets are extremely unsettled. There's a lot of toing and froing, but actually I think sometimes the threat is more significant than actually what happens subsequently to that. So in terms of inflation, there's no doubt that inflation is going to be around a little bit longer. But as we've tried to articulate in various things, the best cure for high commodity prices is high commodity prices. The very nature of high commodity prices encourages a lot more supply. It encourages people to open up the taps and commodity prices fall. And so it's not immediate. Obviously, there's a lead time and a lag and it takes time. But oil prices oil supply will rise. There will be other sources apart from Russia. The OPEC's already having emergency meetings. The US is doing bits and pieces. So ultimately, commodity prices do fall, and you actually have a period of disinflation. So to actually answer your question succinctly, inflation will be, the next year, inflation is going to be higher, and we must expect a central bank response to that. Interest rates are going to rise, and so you've got essentially two drains on purchasing power. You've got high commodity prices, high inflation, and we all know from our own experience at the pump that takes a little bit out of your pocket, and interest rates are going to rise as well, which is a further drain. But we don't see inflation being permanent. We don't think we're going back to a situation in the 70s or 80s where inflation is 8, 9, 10% for a decade or more. But it might be a little bit higher than the sort of average 2% global inflation that we've had for the last 40 years, essentially. So it might be, in global inflation is now 3%, because there's going to be some localization happening. We've reaped this benefit of globalization, the peace dividend when the Soviet Union collapsed and the world integrated. And there's no doubt that that's reversing. And we can even see it here in South Africa in terms of companies bringing some of their manufacturing back on shore to shorten supply lines, have less reliance on shipping costs and all these kinds of things. So that there will be winners and losers out of that, and inflation might be a little bit higher as a result, but we don't believe we're going back to a sustained high inflation environment.
So Michael, what would be some of the factors that would take away from this inflation pressure and not make it like the 70s and 80s? Is that something to do with the technology boom or something like that?
Yeah, I think, if you look longer term, technology is a huge disinflationary force. The way we do things, the way we embrace technology, it is driving down prices because it just leads to much more efficiencies and lower pricing. As I said, even if you think about the European situation and the fact that they rely so much on Russian gas, this crisis has prompted them to exponentially increase their drive to renewables. So in the next 10 years, Europe could be completely weaned off. Well, they are going to wean themselves completely off Russian oil and gas. Actually, in the next 5 years, that's the target by 2027, and they are going to move massively into renewables. So that is going to usher in a whole new level of low inflation. So yes, inflation is going to be around for a little bit. It's not going to sink immediately. And you do have pressure on wages and things as a second round effect that's coming through. But technology advancements in energy and broadly in technology reduces the cost of doing business hugely over time. So we don't think we're going back to a period where inflation is just this perennial bugbear.
Okay, awesome. Well, Michael's going to unpack this a lot more in our Insight presentation, which will be happening on Tuesday morning in Johannesburg in person, Thursday morning in Howick in person, Thursday evening in person and on Zoom. So make sure that if you haven't registered, that you register, whether it's Zoom or in person. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, click the bell so you know when we release a new video. And thank you for joining us. Michael, thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Have a good day.